Well, I got to tell you, we are just about to kick September right in the seat of the pants. In 2006, we're at the bitter end. I looked at a calendar this morning when I was coming here and I said, no, it can't be October already.
Oh, yeah, 'tis the season.
Robert, Dominic, how are you?
Well, if I was doing any better, I wouldn't be able to stand it.
I was, as they would say on a quiz show, this isn't rigged. We've never even met before. Before yesterday, I don't believe I had ever heard your name.
I know who you were.
It's hard for a fat guy like me to hide after all these years. But Calvin said he talked to you and we were coming down here to your place on, what is this, Wolf Way in Plattsburgh, right?
Six Wolf Way.
In Plattsburgh. And when he started telling me about you, then I started to get excited because I don't know why, but it just happens that life has led me to people like you, and I think that's a good thing for us to commiserate, compare notes, sympathize with each other.
I hope it's a good thing.
I hope it's a good thing too, and I'm sure it is. Even though you're not a Yankees fan, we cannot start this interview holding that against you. I couldn't believe it as we sat there last night in my house, and already my engagements for telling ghost stories, I write ghost stories, were starting. And I got a call last night. Hi, this is so-and-so. Can you do our Santa Claus bit again this year? Lord Almighty, it's the fall, isn't it? Huh?
It sure is. It sure is. I was outside for a while this morning. I was thinking, if it wasn't so windy out there right now, we could sit outside and do this. But with my visual aids, they would be blowing all over the place.
Everybody's got to have visual aids. Everybody except me. My lips are my visual aid. Calvin says, stop talking and move a little bit, will you, sometime? Robert, you told me before the camera, before that red light came on, that you were born and brought up in Ellenburg.
That is true.
That's a good thing.
That is a very good thing. It's God's country.
I won't say when. You said you've had some wonderfully deep, profound, and spiritual experiences in that area, as a lot of people have. Ellenburg Depot, Moore's Forks.
Yeah.
That's a great part of the country to be from. I'm not sure God created that part first, but he spent a little time there and got it right, didn't he?
Well, I know he created it first, and he certainly did get it right.
There's no way I can argue with that, right? But I can ask him anyway.
It's open to discussion.
It's open to discussion. So what happened? You grew up there, went to school where?
In Ellenburg Central. Graduated in 1966, and 2 years after that, I started working at Wyeth and Rouse's Point, and I was there for 35 and a half years and was fortunate to have a good life through that. I learned a lot of life's lessons from there, made a lot of good friends, and now that I'm retired, I enjoy going by there once in a while just to see the people, and touch base with them.
So many people connected with Wyeth and its predecessors in the North Country, and even down at Letterly, down in Pearl River, New York, where I was born. So there's connections all over the place if we search for them.
From Pearl River?
Pearl River is where I was born. I don't have any memories of it since I was a tiny baby when we moved over to Westchester County and Thornwood, New York. But
Interesting.
So you went right from high school into that job?
Yeah, just about, yeah. And I, along with that, I was married for 24 years and have three beautiful kids and 3 wonderful granddaughters. And I started as a custodian and went into the boiler room, and then from there went into maintenance and spent 27 years in maintenance. It was a nice experience. It really was. Although some of the guys that I worked with, it was kind of a running joke that I didn't work. Yeah.
Never mind, you are where you are. You may be retired, and they may not be. And there's lots of people sweating out lots of things at Wyeth right now as we're recording this toward the end of September 2006. So then your interests, you started to develop some new interest in the process.
Yes, I did. As you know, everybody has their story. Everybody has their story.
We say that every day.
And I just, through some of life's experience, I felt like I was just being shortchanged. It was more about my victimhood at the time, and in the process, I had some real profound experiences. I see them as miracles now, but at the time I didn't. The stress was so much for me that I was having panic attacks, and ended up in the hospital for stress, and learned some things about me there, and I knew that, as everybody has their story, that some of the books I've read, some people says our story starts when we're conceived, and others say it starts in our teens, and that's all open for discussion. But for whatever that's all about, I knew that coming out of my childhood, which knowing that 96% of all families are dysfunctional, okay, I knew that that had a bearing on my life that was happening in the present day, which, you know, when I had that realization. And I made the commitment to myself and to God that I was going to do whatever it takes for me to get to a point where that so-called history didn't control me anymore. And so everything back then and now has been a wonderful journey. And in the process, with all the knowledge that I've achieved, and I say that in a very humble way, but it's been a blessing and a gift for me for the life that I've been living, and the people I've been exposed to, and all the help and guidance that I've received along the way. And going back to when I was having the panic attacks, it's like I felt like I was so useless and helpless, and that I just I was not feeling good about myself.
What time frame are we talking about now? When
I had,
would that be, 80s, 90s?
It was in the late 70s the first time, and then it was in 93 again. But like in 93, I knew, I had an idea what that was about, so it wasn't so disabling as it was back in 78 or 79. But I knew that I had to continue on my journey and to sort out, or what some people say, peel back the iron layers and clean out the stuff that was in there that was not helpful or beneficial to me.
So you had to make a journey of discovery.
Self-discovery, and that's what the model that I've developed is called, the pathway or journey through self-discovery. And I've been fortunate enough to have it copyrighted, and I now go out and do workshops. So my experience of healing, of walking the journey and trying to learn about myself and to rise to new levels, or as the metaphysical people call it, raising my vibration level, and becoming a Reiki master, and learning more about the energy healing field. That everything all combined has really helped me to rise to new levels. And I now, you know, the Course in Miracles talks about how in order to complete our healing, it is necessary for us to share it with other people so that it becomes solid in us. And that's really my whole goal right now. I tell people that my whole mission is to give people hope and help them raise the bar for themselves, because we can't change people. The only one we can change is ourselves. Even in a relationship, there's such a misperception that if we pray for that other person to change and we ask God for guidance, I've come to the conclusion that it's a selfish prayer when we ask God to change somebody else, because really what it is that it's what we see in somebody else that we want them to change. It's a reflection of what's about going on in us. And Wayne Dyer says, I like Wayne Dyer, I've read a lot of his books, and he says that whatever's inside of something, and he used the reference as an orange, he said if you squeeze the orange, you get orange juice out of it. And if somebody squeezes us and we get angry, then there's anger inside of us. And somebody asked him at one time, what do you mean by squeezing us? And he said that people who push our buttons. If we have somebody in our life that's pushing our buttons, we can either look at them as an enemy, or we can look at them as a saving grace, because nature has provided for us, according to Harville Hendricks, nature has provided for us to have people like that in our lives to help us get in touch with whatever's inside of us. So if people push our buttons, or as Wayne Dyer says, squeeze us, and if it's anger that comes out, then that's something that we have to look at internally about ourselves.
Lots of people are looking for answers. You were looking for answers.
Mm-hmm.
When I got divorced way back in the late 60s, I was looking for answers.
Right.
Sometimes we spend our whole life on that journey looking for answers. But
Mm-hmm.
when we find some, as we said again before the camera started, it behooves us to share our knowledge with others,
Right.
and that's what your quest is right now.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of things that we're talking about already that our audience is saying, what in the heck
Sure.
are they talking about?
Right.
So it'll require some explanation,
That's
and we
great.
will be doing that.
That's good.
That's what
good.
we're here for, and that's why we met.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Oh, we have true visual aids, Robert. We've covered a lot of ground when the camera was off. We always do that.
Yeah.
It's a good thing sometimes that we don't save those little outtakes or snippets or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
But we're here. Let me ask you a question before we begin this portion of our program. Do you have a direct religious affiliation now? Are you connected with a church?
Yes,
or
I
a
am.
denomination? Or?
I was brought up Catholic and still practice in the Catholic faith. I do.
Okay.
However, when in years gone by, when I read about people and they'd say they weren't religious, they were spiritual. Now I'm finding out more about what spirituality is about, and what they meant by that. So I feel like I have a balance between, true spirituality and a religious affiliation.
So
And
what
I'm-
we're
I'm-
talking about today is not directly related with a certain denomination as
No.
people know it,
No, absolutely not.
but it's all connected.
It is. It is. It's in a truest sense, any religious affiliation, when it's done with unconditional love and not being attached to the outcome, when they give guidance and direction to people, that's true spirituality. And whatever faith it might be coming from is still spirituality, because unconditional love is really of God. And so it's
Sometimes the most stressful times in our lives is what precipitates change. Sometimes for the better, sometimes not
Right.
for the better.
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't wake up with this whole idea in a dream. This was a gradual
yes,
revelation
it's
for you?
Yes. Well, it's kind of a balance, because I had been, as I said earlier, the reading I was doing and the knowledge I was achieving to help myself to rise to new levels, as people would say, becoming a better person for myself. I got to a point in my life, in reference to the model, I got to a point in my life when I was down, what they call in the valley, and I was not feeling good about it.
The bottom of the barrel, you mean, as
right,
we say?
Right.
Yeah.
And I was disappointed about some of the manifestations in my life. And so I remember my prayer to God was, I've been, people come to me for guidance and for insight, and we talk about things in a very loving way. However, at this point, I'm disappointed where I'm at. So it's like, I feel like I'm at a standstill. And somehow or other, I think I was inspired by God to ask for this, and I asked God for a vision. I said, if I could have a vision to help understand what's going on, and if I can really understand this vision, then I may be better able to help other people. And so after I asked that request of God, I don't think it might have been just a few weeks going by, and in my mind, I started having this vision about what the model is now, how it's drawn up. And as I started with the vision, I started to doodle, what I call doodle on paper, just kept doing it over and over again. And one of the groups that I work with, Separate and Divorce at St. Peter's, I started sharing it with them because it was insight that I felt like I was getting, and I thought it would be beneficial to them. And as the interaction going on over weeks and weeks with them, and just going back and forth, I finally had what I called, the rough draft. And then I started going outside of here with it. And then, I felt like, well, it was recommended to me by a friend, a close friend, that I needed to do the copyright on it, because she said that this was very revolutionary. It was a new way of looking at life, and that it was going to go places, whether it will or not. I'm not attached to the outcome on that. I just feel like I need to share it with people. But I did take her advice in getting it copyrighted. Because
That's a great idea. And you feel, from what I understand in this little time since we've known each other, as it must be a humbling experience, because you feel as though you're kind of a conduit.
Absolutely.
That it's flowing through you and out into the world, and
Yeah.
that there was a certain plan there. And that's, like I said, that's kind of a humbling experience all by itself.
I do feel very humble. And that night when I get in bed and I'm thinking about this and giving thanks for the beautiful life that I live, I think about, how could this possible? How is it possible for me to have this experience when?
This kid from Ellenberg.
That's right. Retired from as a maintenance mechanic who did some electrical and plumbing and other, associated duties at work, and having a family that I stumbled and I limped through giving, leadership as a parental role model. And it's like, at that time, I was seeing myself in my, what I so-called imperfection. And as God was saying, no, that's not imperfection. It's all part of the learning process.
You can't help but stumble from time to time.
Yeah, well, I do.
Getting up is how you learn. Stumbling and getting up is how you learn.
Yeah.
So you talk about this model and copywriting this and whole idea. Give us a little basic idea of what it's all about. Start to explain to people in your own words what you've come up with here, Robert.
Well, it's called The Pathway Journey Through Self-Discovery. And the key word here is self. When I'm working with this model with people, they start thinking about the model and they refer to other people. I say, no, this is not right now to think about other people. This is about self. And look at it in a way that this will help enhance one's life. And I share with them that all of our experiences are not accidental or bad luck. They are if we see ourselves as being in victimhood. However, if we choose to look at it from the viewpoint that I want to learn from this process or this experience, and then when we put that out, what I call putting it out to the universe, to God, and we give God permission to help us through it, that's free will. That's free. But anyway, it starts out that kind of like when we're born. As I said earlier, some people feel like our journey starts when we're conceived. Some people think it's in the 4 or 5 years old, some teenagers, and some believe that that doesn't affect us at all. I don't make any of that wrong. I'm of the belief that whatever time we choose to start learning, that's when we kick it into high gear. Whatever happened before, if we choose to learn from the experiences that we've had, it really enhances our life. And what I've looked at now, and as I've emphasized so many times to people, let's just look at this a little bit differently. Because many people are, through learned behavior, we stay in our victimhood. We've learned that, if somebody hurts us, we have to look at it in that perspective. And it doesn't enhance our life. So getting back to the model, if you look at it, the healthy perceptions, the love, hope, happiness, peace, if we're joy-filled, dreaming, trust, and that's innocent trust as if of a child, okay? And it even refers to scripture, we mistrust as a child does. And we have there's clarity, authenticity, expectations of fulfillment, and we can refer back to that again. And then there's creativity. And as I was doodling, as I said, doodling that on paper, I was thinking, what's this all about? What's this all about? And I thought, this is like what babies are when they're born. Okay? And people say, well, how could that be? How can they have clarity? Well, when babies are hungry, they cry, right? They're clear on that. They're not saying that they're hungry, but we know as parents that they're hungry, so we feed them. So they're clear on that. And they're authentic. If they're hungry, they cry. And they have expectations of fulfillment. They expect to be taken care of. Plain and simple. And we could go through all that, in more detail, but maybe because we can get back to it if it's necessary. Okay, this is what we call life's experiences, or the Course in Miracles says the illusionary state. Okay, and as it says here, life's experiences, and we're talking about here the negative part of life. And as you look at this as it goes down, this is how it happens. It happens in this order. Then when we become adults, if we stay in our victimhood, we vacillate through all these experiences. But really, it's where the negative experiences start is through physical, verbal, emotional, psychological, sexual abuse. And there's probably other abuses, we could describe. But this gets us in the area where it helps us understand where we're at. So as I said earlier, 96% of all families are dysfunctional. Whatever level of degree of dysfunction that the family is what they, through learned behavior, is how the children, the kids, the small ones, whatever age, how they start to learn that. Okay? And keeping in mind that 1 in 4 little girls are raped and 1 in 5 little boys are raped. Okay? So when we talk about the sexual abuse, and then what happens is when we start to experience those abuses, we develop misperceptions, and there's confusion that follows the misperceptions, okay? And the misperceptions are, well, just to follow this down, I'll stay with this for now. We have misperceptions and confusion. And what happens is that along the line, we develop guilt and shame and blame. And knowing that blame from a psychological vantage point is emotional paralysis. When we continue to blame somebody else, and people receive injustices, whether it be hurts or whatever one wants to call it, they receive injustices through the abuse, whatever the abuse may be. And when we stay there and we hold on to the anger towards them, and sometimes it happens in the quietness of our mind. It's what they call denial, okay? And what happens is that because we're blaming somebody else, we stay there. We're like in a vacuum. We don't move in a healthy way. And then there's hate. This is something that in our culture, and it's not that we try to, when we work with people, it's not we try to turn them into, to hating people, but it's learning to express it in a controlled environment so that they can get that energetic discomfort out. And then there's also rejection and abandonment. So I'll go over them again. The emotional part, there's guilt, shame, blame, which is emotional paralysis. There's hate, rejection, and abandonment. And what happens is that as we start to grow and have more experiences, we have what is called victimhood, what I call self-serving paralysis. We hold on to it because it's learned behavior. Wayne Dyer says that what we do is that it's like riding in a boat, and if we look behind at the wake and keep looking behind at the wake, we're probably going to run into something. And what we do is that we had the self-serving paralysis. We're giving power over our history, and it really doesn't. When we understand it clearly, it doesn't have power over us. But through learned behavior, we give it power. And so, as the wake has no control over us, or over over the boat, our history really has no control over us. But simply because we've been taught that it does, we give it power. And the last one is what we call the self-imposed roadblock. And people, through the course of discussions, we start talking about self-imposed roadblocks. And the greatest one is, I do not deserve, I am not good enough. That's the greatest self-imposed roadblock. And we were taught that, okay? And really, what really controls that is that through all of our experiences, there's pain. We develop pain and fear, which I say equals unresolved anger. And people say that, well, I thought I was rid of my anger. And I say, no, you'll never be rid of your anger, simply because when God created us, he created us with all the emotions. And healthy anger is a healthy emotion. We need to differentiate between healthy anger and unresolved anger. And the unresolved anger, I believe in 90% of our culture, lays dormant in our subconscious. It has energetic implications on our life because we think in our quietness of our mind, I do not deserve, I am not good enough. So that explains, in the Course in Miracles, this is the natural state when we're born, okay? And again, the Course in Miracles talks about this as being the illusionary state. And what I've done is I put them both together. And this is how we live. This is how 99% of our culture lives. We live with this in us. That natural state is always in us. It never goes. And when people say when they want to rediscover themselves or achieve clarity and so on, this is where we need to be, right here. But what happens is that this becomes the pressure cooker of our life. And it's like in one of the books I read, that why is it that we have many good experiences in our life and that we focus more on this? And it was explained that in our body, say if we, as some carpenters would know, when they hit their thumb with the hammer, all their attention goes on that because it hurts. And this is all about the hurts in our life, the pain and the fear. So we focus in the quietness of our mind on that. And some people are very explosive and some people are very internal. Like with myself, when I was having the panic attacks, I was internal. I suppressed it. But really what we're looking at is just wanting to clear that out, the history out. And with the 3 questions, somehow or other these 3 questions were coming to me at the time. And it's, what am I afraid of? What am I to learn about myself through the experience? And what did I do to contribute to the experience? And this, for many, many people, to be understood, is very much a stretch for them. Because it's difficult. And I was there at one time to think about what I was afraid of. And it was also difficult for me to think that I had something to learn about myself through the experience. And it was also difficult for me to think, what did I do to contribute to the experience? We can take any one experience or multiple experiences, and these 3 questions apply to us. And this is what helps the process. People say, how do you work through that? If we ask ourselves the 3 questions and then not try to answer them. Wayne Dyer says, not be attached to the outcome. It's like, because we have this mindset about how somebody has hurt us and we're the victim, it's difficult for us to go there. But if we can trust this process and just ask ourselves a question, and I tell people, it's like these questions are like an eraser. If we trust in the process, each time we ask ourselves that question, it's like it erases some of the iron layers away. And that stuff can be released, the garbage that we collect, the emotional garbage that we collect over the years. So, keeping in mind that our history, as the gurus are saying, our history really has no control over us. And I really believe that, and I'm very comfortable with that my history, but I had to get to a point where I understood that, okay, to acknowledge it. So the next step is to, knowing that our history doesn't control us, when we get really comfortable with that, then it's very easy for us, or I shouldn't say very easy, it's much easier. That's all cleared out. If you see here, that's all cleared out. And we still have, I do not deserve, I'm not good enough, and the pain and fear. So how would I put this now? Now that we know that this is all cleared out, and that we are headed in the right direction as far as the healing process, the only thing we have to look at, instead of standing in the boat and looking at the wave behind the boat, we can look at, it's like the game, is it Monopoly or whatever? You get the card that says, go to jail, go directly to jail, do not go past go. Okay, so really what we're doing is that we're going right past our history. We're going directly to where the self-imposed roadblock is. I'm not good enough, I don't deserve. And I think probably the line of work that you were in at one time, it's like the people that were coming to you were very well immersed in this, I'm not good enough.
Absolutely.
And it really...
Robert's referring to 8 years I spent after the radio career as a crime victims advocate here in the probation department, and you're absolutely right.
Right. And also, I mean, that line of, that type of environment, separated and divorced people, families that are in turmoil, it's all about, this is what's driving it. I'm not good enough, I do not deserve.
Yep.
And really, it's just vacillating. It's vacillating through our history that keeps that cycle going. And when we can clear this out, and I want to emphasize that we need to let go of the fact that our history has control over us. We never forget it, but we get to a point where we realize it doesn't have any control over us, and we just need to work this process. And keeping in mind, I haven't mentioned this yet, that in this side, in this illusionary state, we live life in a limited way. It's limited life's purpose. And this is how many people get so close to something, then it doesn't happen. They pray about something, and they try to work on something, and it slips through their fingers. Whether it be job-related or relationships or so on, many people in relationships, they go from one relationship to another. And it's like, they try to give and give and give, and all of a sudden the other person doesn't reciprocate. And really what it is, it's about, I'm not good enough. And what we do in a relationship is that if we give and give and give, sometimes we compromise who we are, we give our power away. And we need to get back into that healthy state where I am good enough. And this is exactly, just keep in mind that our history, the arrow points towards I'm not good enough. And when we search or seek or achieve, that everything is out of our playing field, so to speak, that our history doesn't control us anymore. And if you look at this, when we get back into our natural state, then it says, I do deserve, I am good enough. And it's doable. It really is doable. That's the hope about it. When people say, oh, it won't work, it just doesn't happen for me and so on, and I tell people, that's energetic. And if you say it, and you continue to say it, it will continue to happen, in the sense that it won't happen for you. It doesn't work. It's not worth it. What I tell people, we have to do the 180. Just change our thinking. From whatever we're thinking negatively, we change that to the other side. And where I learned that was Dr. Norman Vincent Peale and Power of Positive Thinking. When I was in that state of depression, I remember reading about how he said, if you think life is not good for you, and you think that it's not worth living, and all those negative thoughts, he said, you just take that thought and have an opposite thought, or a positive thought. And that was kind of like it's like when a light bulb went off for me. And in that, he said, if you can put a smile on your face, right where you're at the time that you're thinking negative thoughts, if you put that smile on your face, then you know you can do it. And so, all of this has been the journey, the pathway, is and I'm still journeying. I'm still in the pathway, and I believe that we always will be. And there's always room for more learning. There's always room for more creativity, more expectations of fulfillment, and it just goes on and on and on.
You know, most of us had breakfast this morning, but this is very good food for thought. It's almost lunchtime, and it's something for us to just gnaw on and chew on and think about. We'll continue our conversation in a moment with Robert Dominic. Now, as many of my friends have told me, and as all of us would have to agree, it's not the years you spend in formal schools, education. It's not the number of degrees you acquire. It's how you live your life and what you study and what you've read. And, you know, Henry David Thoreau was a self-bred philosopher, a man who just studied nature and learned what was going on. And you just, because of your tremendous need way back when, you've expressed that very eloquently to us today, you started reaching out. You started searching, you started reading, you started just trying to find some answers. And in finding those answers, somehow you managed to throw everything up in the air and catch the stuff that got filtered out and turn it into something that's kind of unique and novel. And this is just my reaction to what you've said so far. It makes a lot of sense. First of all, it's good. Most of what you're saying is very good psychology. All you have to do is read some of the masters to agree with that. But the question I have when it's all done is, how come we didn't think of that a long time ago? I guess we waited for a guy named Robert to come along to spell it out for us.
Oh, well, what I'm doing is that I'm sharing what I've learned, and whether or not I've, you know, when you say that, again, I feel very humble, as I stated earlier. But my whole process has been, you know, when you talk about how we throw things up in the air and try to catch what's really, what I tell people is that when I now that I'm a Monday morning quarterback, I can look back and see where I was looking for clarity in life. And on the model, when I talk about the misperceptions and confusion, Jesus says in the Course in Miracles that in order to heal, we need to correct the misperceptions. And so the whole process of healing is seeking clarity, and clarity about our misperceptions, you know, and that with the misperceptions, the confusion follows. And we can choose, as I said before about blame is emotional paralysis. And so if we continue to blame somebody else, it serves no purpose other than that it keeps us there in the vacuum. And in that, when we achieve, as we're on the pathway to self-discovery or clarity, we see things differently. But we first have to choose to look at it differently. The answers aren't there immediately. And there's a saying that Wayne Dyer says that when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. And so you talk about that stuff that we throw up in the air and comes down. That's how the teacher appears, really, in many, many ways, many fashions, whether it be books, whether it be, like I've done much counseling. I've gone to, I was with 3 or 4 different counselors, and finally I connected with a lady who I spent 3 years with her in counseling, which was very beneficial to my life. But this is one of the ways that we achieve clarity. But when you throw it up, the creativity of the universe, when it all comes down, it falls right where it needs to. We just need to trust that process. And I'm so glad that you bring that up, because it makes it easier for me to relate to that. But also, I need to say this, that all the information that's being put out now, in fairness to, you know, when I talk about families being dysfunctional, 96% of families, I'm not being critical. I just want to be clear on that. Like with my family, my parents, okay? They're beautiful people.
That's right. Calvin wants us to move a little bit. Let's stop the camera and get set up again. Calvin's a choreographer. He didn't realize that.
Yeah.
You and I were doing a slow dance, he said, and getting the bad camera angles. Yeah. So anyway, we're here.
Yeah, but I want to get back on talking about, you know, when I stressed about 96% of all families are dysfunctional, is I just want to make sure that when I talk about clarity, it's not a criticism towards the families at all. It just is what it is. And what in that, like with my parents and growing up and so on, everybody does the best they can, really. And where where they're at, okay? Everybody does, and this has been one of my As I have achieved clarity, I realize that I made mistakes, as an individual, as a husband, as a father, and as a role model. I realize I made mistakes, but I've learned to look at it and assess it to be constructive and not with regret and beat up on myself. And knowing that the family I came from, we have a very loving, caring family. I mean, we're a large family, but we get together quite often, and it's because we know that because of that caring that we have for each other, that we can share time together. But I have family in Syracuse and some a sister down in south of Atlanta, and we're always getting together. So it's not about dysfunctional families that don't participate together or have very genuine, loving experiences. So like with my parents, I mean, they are two of the most, well, they've passed on, but I still see them as two of the most beautiful people that walk the face of the earth. And I am so honored to have them as my parents. I worked through some misperceptions that I had, achieved clarity, and it's like I can now talk to them, even though they moved on. I can talk to them and receive insight and guidance. So I just want to be very sensitive to everything that I've talked about. And also to just emphasize also that back then, the communications weren't like they are now. I mean, I can go online and read about the Course in Miracles and study with Mary Ann Williams online about the Course in Miracles. I can go to the bookstore and I can get any book that I would like or that I may need or that I'm guided to. I mean, I've gone to the bookstore and standing there and just a book just stands right out. I'll give you an example. Deepak Chopra, a book called Creating Affluence. It's like, I was concerned about my financial future at one time. And if anybody is concerned about their financial future or anything else, I recommend that they buy that book. It's
what a person, huh?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I mean, it's like the energy of his charisma is such that when you start reading that book, Creating Affluence, it's amazing because it helps you realize that if we aren't attached to the outcome and if we just trust that the process works, whether it be self-discovery, whether it be the Course in Miracles, whether it be the Imago therapy by Harville Hendricks or whatever. It's where we put our focus, and if we want to rise to new levels, and we trust that there's a universal energy out there, call it God, call it Buddha, or whatever. There is an unconditional universal energy out there that loves us and wants the best for us. And knowing that there's so much communication now, and back when my parents were young parents and so on, it wasn't there. And they struggled, like I said, how I limped and so on. So did my parents, like any other family. So it's not so much, when I was reading a book by Melody Beatty called Codependency No More, when I realized that I came from a dysfunctional family, I went into a concern that, why did that happen? I was looking at it with regret, rather than looking at it, that's okay, that's normal. I can still rise, to new levels. And there's anyone, no matter what the family situations are, and I want to say that in a very sensitive way, no matter what our experiences were, we can heal from them if we choose to.
How many of these people that you've mentioned, whose names we mentioned, and we're going to talk a little bit about them as individuals, how many of them know that they've inspired you? Have you told them?
Yes, I've been able to talk with Gary Zukav, who's wrote The Seed of the Soul and Soul Stories and Heart of the Soul. And I met him down at Omega in Rhinebeck, New York, and I was able to have a short conversation with him and thanked him. And he emphasized then that how important it is for him to hear that, because even though he's world-renowned, he writes books, he has his websites and so on, he still needs to hear that input. And that's validation. Yeah. And that's so important. Wayne Dyer, I had a chance to talk to him at Omega, and he wrote a book called A Promise to Promise, and it's about Kay and Eduardo Obero from Miami, who Eduardo went into a diabetic coma at 16 or 17 years old, and from what I understand, she's still alive. And because of her being in like a coma, I identified with her because of my brother Billy, who was in the nursing home for years. And so I developed a friendship with the mother, Eduardo's mother, and when I got down to Omega and I went up to Wayne and asked him to sign my book, and I just said nonchalantly, I really liked your book, about A Promise to Promise. He said, you read that? I said, yes. He said, why'd you do that? So I started talking about Billy and so on. So we just kind of sat down and talked for a few minutes. And just, it's like People have mentioned how, you know, how eloquent he is. He can talk for 4 hours and never run out of things to say, and it all makes sense. And if you can sit next to him and just feel his energy, it's a miracle upon miracles.
It's magic, isn't it?
Yeah,
It
it really
is
is. Yeah, and there's oh God, I was with Rosalind Breyer, who was into the energy healing, like the Reiki and so on, and I spent a week with her in a group forum at Omega, and just being around her.
What's Omega?
Omega is it's in Rhinebeck, New York. It's kind of like a holistic place where you can go and there's many forms of education. There's dancing. Until I started reading their manual, I didn't realize that you could heal yourself by dancing.
Oh, sure.
Okay, and then they teach acupuncture down there, and they bring in the Wayne Dyers and the Gary Zukoffs. It's all under the metaphysical holistic. You know, it's just Marianne Williamson. You know, they have conferences for women. They have conferences for well, just many conferences, and it's about on shamanism. They got people who go in there for shamanism. So it's kind of like a melting pot for everybody to learn
Good
from.
experience for you, I guess.
I get excited. You know, I'm going down tomorrow for 10 days, and I'm just, you know, I'm like a little kid.
A lot of neat things have happened in Rhinebeck.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
How about this person right here, Harville Hendricks?
Harville Hendricks, he's one of the people I'm going to be with for a week. He has created what they call the Imago therapy, IMAGO, and he was on Oprah a few times, and Oprah gives him credit for changing her life. Again, it's looking at life differently, and this is to do with relationships, helping each other to heal. And the way he describes the Imago therapy is like nature creates for two people to come together to help each other heal their childhood wounds. And he says how that happens is that we don't see the dysfunction of the person immediately. He calls it the anesthesia of romance. When we fall in love with somebody, we don't see the dysfunction. And that's a protection to help us get together with somebody. And then in the process, as the anesthesia starts to wear off, then we start to push each other's buttons. And it's understood in the metaphysical field that when somebody pushes our buttons, it's to help us to look inside. Whatever somebody else is making us upset about, it's exactly what's going on inside of us, and we need to be grateful for how they're pushing our buttons, and just go inside and search. And what does that mean to me? Again, the 3 questions: what am I to learn about myself through the experience, and what am I doing to contribute to it? And usually, there's fear about it that prevents us from going there.
You developed this wonderful model, as you call it.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the end of it, or are you revising it as you get new inspiration?
I will. I'm thinking that a year from now, I'm going to revise it and do another copyright on it.
Have you actually written your whole presentation down in book form, or
No,
is it
no.
is just in your head right now?
Not yet. I'm thinking about writing a book. Actually, I've done a little research on it, and I have not started writing it yet, but I expect to in the future.
Well, at some point in time, you might feel as though you're challenged to share this idea with
Yes.
a much wider audience.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then you'll do that. But
Yeah.
like you said, it's a journey,
It is. It really
and
is.
you're still pressing forward on this this journey. A couple of questions come to mind. You work here out of this apartment on a regular basis with people. How do they find you?
Through word of mouth at this point in time. I did put an ad in the paper a year or so ago, and I did get some calls. However, most of it is through word of mouth. And also, I facilitate the separate and divorce at St. Peter's every Wednesday night.
That's very, very important. And this is an affiliation you cherish, and I'm sure the people who work with you do that.
Yeah.
Because we've all been there.
Yeah.
I say we've all been there. You and I have been there, because we've shared that experience off camera.
Right now, the divorce rate is at 57 or 58%.
And it's growing.
And also you add to that there's, I've heard from, it's been said to me between 12 and 15% that are separated but can't afford the divorce, so they just go separated. So if you add those two figures together, that 57 and 12 to 15%, that's quite.
Or the people that remain married for 50 years and are grossly unhappy
Yes.
for the entire time period because they haven't ever tried to discover why.
Right. Well, and also when you mention that, the Imago therapy by Harville Hendricks, that when I will be a certified Imago therapist when I come back from that, but this can This is designed to really help each other to talk through their issues, to help listen to each other. So it's doable. And yes, you mentioned, it's a good point that you mentioned about those that are together that aren't happy. And when, if you go to a function, whether it be at church or at a school function or whatever, if anybody is gifted to see the energetic value between two people, you can sense that they're together, but it's not a cohesive relationship.
You mentioned, I'm going to set this down over here. You you've had several what I call magic words. One of my favorite magic words, because I've been in the business all of my adult life, is communication.
Yes.
And you have to talk to yourself.
Yes.
You have to talk to the guy upstairs, but you've got to talk to each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Communication and everything you've talked about today is an essential ingredient.
You mentioned a good point about communication, and we have to talk to ourselves. And one of the programs I'm studying is with Byron Katie. It's called Inquiry. And if anybody would like to see what she's about, you can go online. It's the word THEWORK.com. In her book called I Need Your Love, Is That True? She says, and it's like, I just thought that of any one-line statements in any of the books I read, this one line was so profound. And she said the most intimate relationship we can have is with our thoughts. Really. And that's about, it was like...
It's profound and true, absolutely true.
And when you mentioned about communication, if we don't have an intimate relationship with our thought, then we can't have an intimate relationship with anybody else or anything, whether it be in the woods or whatever. I mean, some people go to the woods, which is very healthy in a way. But if they go in there and they're thinking about how they want to get away from life and so on, which is healthy to get away. But if they go in there with what I call regret, and I'm using the woods as an example.
It's a good example.
But if they go in there and they think about how angry they are and how somebody's hurting them, then that's blame. As I said on the model, it's emotional paralysis. To have an intimate relationship with ourselves, with our thoughts, is that we need to get to the I'm not good enough issues. Okay, I don't deserve. So yes, having communications with somebody else is to have a functional, viable, loving, caring relationship. First starts with ourselves. It really does. This is not something that I thought of myself. As I said, I've read many books, but I've come to the conclusion that I need to be comfortable in my own skin. And when I'm comfortable in my own skin, then I can be comfortable with other people.
Now you talked about your meetings you have with separated and divorced people at St. Peter's.
Yeah.
We're recording this toward the end of September 2006, Robert. Is that something that's ongoing?
Every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock is for separated and divorced. It really is.
Is that announced from the pulpit, or how did people find out about that?
We do advertise through the church bulletins, and also one of the ladies in the group now has taken on the responsibility for promoting it elsewhere. And I didn't realize that my name was going in the paper on a regular basis, but I did get some calls through it, and that's when I realized, but anyway, I find a little humor in it that, that I was, when I started getting the calls, when I realized what she, and I was grateful that she was doing it, I really was. She took the ball and she ran with it, but it is advertised in the papers and also through church bulletins, and sometimes it's put up in some of the therapist offices, to let them know that where they can go. So.
And you talk about the same techniques.
Yes.
In your model here.
Yes. Yeah. What it is that we create a safe environment, and no matter when I'm working with somebody or so on, and this is what we need to do in any relationship. If we feel safe in a relationship, if we feel validated, then the manifestations of that are very, very fruitful. So in the environment of St. Peter's upstairs in the upper room, that's always our intention, to create a safe environment. So, once people have been coming for a while, they get very comfortable.
Think about that connotation, if you will, the upper room at St. Peter's.
Yeah. And anyway, the new people that come in, they I think early on, both of them get a sense that it's a very, very safe environment. And we do stress confidentiality there, that whatever is said there stays there. And we honor what people say, even though we may not agree with what they're saying. But when people come in early on, they need to vent, and we allow that time.
Don't you think those kinds of groups are so extremely valuable?
Yes.
I'm speaking from I was going to say purely selfish point of view, but I won't go that far. I've told anybody who listen, including this camera, many times that in spite of my long career on the radio here, what I do with Calvin And hometown cable is very important.
Yes.
This kind of interview, because as you said before, everybody's got a story. But also, I consider my 8-year career as a crime victims advocate in the local probation department as perhaps the most important 8 years of my life, because you're able to help people who desperately need help. And when you were talking about this group you have for separated and divorced people, I was thinking about a program that we started, a national pilot program to form and conduct regular meetings for a stalking group in the safety of behind locked doors in a safe meeting room in the Department of Probation, and the difference that it made in my life and in these victims' lives, people who have been stalked or are being stalked. And I've been retired from that career for 1 year. And my wife, Kay, long-suffering, wonderful lady, because you mentioned 13 kids, and that's how many we raised before we raised a couple of grandchildren after that. But I still get calls daily from people who attended those stalking groups saying, oh, I miss those times we had together. And so I can immediately and wholeheartedly identify with you. That's the importance of those places, those meetings in a safe place. And safe has a very broad meaning in that respect. Not only physically safe, but emotionally safe too.
Yeah. I just, on that topic of being safe, I'm just thinking, I just want to share this, that feeling safe is so important. Some of the families I've worked with, and I've had teenagers in those families, and I would, at random sometimes, ask the kids, the teenagers, I'd ask them the difference between, we talk about feeling safe and feeling love, then I'd say, which is more important to you, to feel love or to feel safe? And right across the board, first one would be safe. If they felt safe in a family conflict.
Think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Talk about food for thought.
Yeah, really. I just, and like we can always learn. And I tell them, I said, I'm not asking you a question or an answer that I have. I just want to learn from you guys. And when I put that out there, they just safe. There was no doubt about it. If they can feel safe. So, yes, what you're saying is so valid about in these meetings, and that's what we try to do with the group. And then even when people come here, a feeling of being safe and validated. Yeah.
Now, something else I should mention here, and we encourage people to open the doors to knowledge, especially self-knowledge. And you do that by looking at everything and reading everything and not shutting yourself off from any one field or one direction in terms of religious affiliation or anything else, but look at it all. And do what I said before about throwing it up in the air and see what comes down and works for you. And even the biggest crackpot that I've ever talked to or read about always has a germ of something that's relevant to my life. And in having this interview with you, which I find enlightening and satisfying for myself, I see that you've done that. You've boiled it all down. And some of these people are crackpots. Some of them have gone off on a tangent and gone so far and subscribed to the only way you can heal yourself is my way. And that isn't at all what you say.
No, I just, as you share that, when you talk about, people coming in here, and so on, I've had some people say, you must think I'm such a jerk. You must you must think that I'm really...
That's part of a whole thing that you
and they go on and on about things that they think I think about them, and I just say no. I said, you're no different than anybody else. What we're looking at here is unresolved issues, really.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, and so the unresolved, what I talked about in the model about unresolved fear, is actually unresolved issues, and that's all it is. And I say that's all. Some people that are down in the valley, so to speak, and think that how can that be all it is? But really, what it is that as I said before, it's the unresolved issues, and we need to seek clarity on the confusion and the misperception. I don't mean to oversimplify it, but I think if you look at it in a way that this is all it is we're seeking clarity, and the people, whether they be crackpots or whatever they may be, I see these people as having unresolved issues, and also I see them in a way that if families that have children are on drugs or whatever, or if there's other dysfunction going on. The drugs itself, I don't see that as a problem. That's a symptom. I see it as a symptom. we need to go deeper. Again, the three questions. I think people who are on drugs, and I just want to be clear, that I'm not being critical towards them, and because I'm taking my time here to be clear, because when I've worked with people, they get very defensive, and I just want to be understood that I see people who are on drugs, that's not the problem. It's something deeper. The three questions: what am I afraid of? What am I to learn about myself? And also, what am I doing to contribute to the experience?
I like your analogy to iron layers. I've referred many times in my own analogies. You try to create models when you talk to people, and I talk about peeling away the onion.
Sure.
But I'm going to change that now that I've talked to you today. Because opening those iron doors, and sometimes they're very, very heavy,
Yeah, right.
and very hard to move, far more difficult than peeling an onion.
Right.
But it's only until you do that
Right.
you can heal.
Right, and it's necessary. It really is. It's what I call, the old phrase, stepping up to the plate. We really do. And I've come in contact with people who have admitted, that there's too much fear to step up to the plate. They choose to stay in the environment that they're in. They choose to stay in the attitude that they have. That it's not worth it. I'm not, it just won't happen for me. And because they make that conscious choice, that's exactly where they stay.
I was talking with somebody this morning. I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No, it's
but
okay.
you say these phrases which ring true to me, and I hope they do to our viewers as well. You can't conquer your fears unless you face them.
No.
And so stepping up to the plate, if you're afraid of getting hit with a pitched ball, the only way you're going to conquer that fear is not to run and hide in the back room, unless you're never going to play baseball again. It's to stand up there and let her rip, right?
Oh, yeah.
Face the fear and conquer it.
Yeah. And when you mention that, it makes me think about forgiveness. And this is another, within the religions and so on, and even in the spiritual connotation, forgiveness is a very difficult subject. And there's a book out there called Radical Forgiveness by Colin Tippin. And 2 or 3 years ago, I went down to Atlanta and I did a workshop with him. It was 30 of us. There was people from England and all over. I mean, this is part of my wonderful experiences. I meet people from different cultures. But anyhow, in that radical forgiveness, Colin Tippin, and it's been my experience to find out, because the journey I've been making and all that I've achieved for myself, I was, with the unresolved anger that was still residing within me, it was about forgiveness, lack of forgiveness. And it was lack of forgiveness on my own part for myself, really. And what Colin says, and I agree with him 100%, is that we can't just objectively try to forgive somebody and say, I forgive them, and that's it. Because what happens is that over years, we develop this mindset or this attitude about particular issues or how we look at life. And as long as we're looking at life in a particular way, and we pray to forgive somebody, or we tell God that we forgive them, but that is still immersed in our energy field. And basically the only way we can get rid of that is that, as Colin Tippin has devised a program through Radical Forgiveness, there's a 22-step program, and I've been facilitating. I've did 3 or 4 book studies now on that, and with people in the local area. But anyway, we need to actually feel that. We need to express it. We need to come, as you said, step up to the plate. We need to come face to face with it. And it's doable. It's doable. And in the confines of a group, the intimacy of a group, and also the safe zone that we create, I am just amazed at the results that that we see. I mean, it's just, again, I feel in awe, and I feel very humbled that I'm having these experiences to witness with people. But I had to do it for myself. I had to do it for myself early on. And now, as Henry Nouwen, I think, who wrote the book called The Wounded Healer. And I think we all are. We're all wounded healers.
We have to accept that role, too,
Yeah,
when
sure.
it's given to us. For those people who are just turning on their television set, we're sorry you missed the best part of the interview. It's all downhill from here. We're talking with Robert Dominic at his home in Plattsburgh. He and I have never met before this very day, and we've come to understand each other, I hope, a little bit better before we're through. How many of your friends do you think say, oh, poor Robert, he's really gone off the deep end? Or do people at least overtly think, hey, Robert, you're doing a good job here?
Well, the second part is I have a lot of validation on that. I'm people have emphasized many, many times, and I feel good about it now. At one time, I couldn't accept a compliment, but now I know that it's okay. It really is healthy to accept a compliment. But the ones that think that it's very few, very few. And the sad truth about that is that those that feel that way are holding on to their victim,
Of course.
their victimhood. You know.
I wanted you to say that.
Yeah, and it's, you know, and again, you know, my I feel like my mission is to give people hope and encourage them to raise the bar for themselves. And as I said early on, we can't change anybody else. We have to change ourselves. And in that, when I encourage people to raise the bar for themselves, if they're holding on to their victimhood, they just don't want to go there.
And once those iron doors have been opened up and you're getting down in yourself, then
Sure.
then people can go on to the rest of their life learning so much more about themselves long after you and I are dead and gone.
Life, you know, when we're going through that experience and when we've healed, when we've worked through a good share of I'm not good enough issues, the unresolved anger, life begins to flow much easier. Excuse me, it really does. I'm just, and having had that experience, I can speak to it, you know, and that I share that, not about how good I am, but to give people hope. It's doable. It really is doable, and it really is. It's just.
Now, let's talk about some of these people you've mentioned who've been on Oprah Show and Dr. Phil and Harville Hendricks and a lot of these other guys and other people you've mentioned. Let's face it, they become very rich because of what they've done. It may be something that's just an adjunct to the fact that they're well known and that Oprah is very rich and wants them on her show and feels as though they've changed her life. I doubt if Robert's very rich except in a personal sense based on what you do. The point I'm making is these meetings at St. Peter's don't cost people a lot of money, right?
Nothing, absolutely nothing. And it's free for the coming, and the room is maintained, you know, by the church and so on. So all we have to do is go in and sit down. They have comfortable couches, and no, there's no charges at all for anyone there. It really is.
And how about the people that come here to talk to you for the counseling things?
There is. I have a fee. However, I use a sliding scale, and at this point, the universe has sent me many people that you know that are in need of it, and I turn nobody away. I turn nobody away.
I can hear my wife Kay's little voice in the background. Gordy, have you always give it away? You're never. And I say, look at us. Every day we've been married for a long time, raised this huge family. We drive down the road yesterday heading for shopping together, and we just talk to each other about how blessed we are and how wonderful we feel about what we have. And it doesn't boil down to dollars and cents.
Right.
Thank God it doesn't boil down to dollars and cents, right?
When you mention that, it makes me think of the book I mentioned earlier by Deepak Chopra called Creating Affluence. When I read that book, I began to settle in, to trust that my life is taken care of.
Yeah.
And my mission now is to serve. And that's my prayer on a very, how may I serve? And find me where I need to be found. And in that, I know I'm taken care of. You know, and just an interesting point when you mentioned about the people are rich. And Wayne Dyer was asked, I mean, he shares that story. I'm not sure if it was Power of Intention or what series he was in, but somebody said something about, don't you feel guilty about making all that money? His answer was, it's not my fault. He says,
It's not my fault.
He says, I know that I'm making a difference in the universe. He says, not because I'm world renowned, but he says, I do the simple things. And he says, I know I'm making a difference. And he said, it's not my fault that people want to pay for the books. He says, I got to put the books out. He says, so that people can learn. I got to do the workshops and do the on PBS. And he says, it's not my fault that people are willing to pay for that. He says, we got to cover all the expenses. And he says, if I make extra money, he says, it's not. He says, I'm not doing this for the money. He says, I'm doing this because I truly believe that this world would be a better world if everybody found their passion. And by finding their passion, he says, find what we love and love what we do and do it with passion. And it's like, I have taken that to heart, that saying. When it, when, like the line, that Byron Katie said, that the most intimate relationship we can have is with our thoughts. Every once in a while, we will get those, what resonates in us. And when Wayne Dyer said, that he believes he's making a difference, and to do it with passion, that's where I'm at in life right now.
Calvin knows that's one of my favorite words, communication, but passion.
Sure.
If you're going to do something, like you said before, step up to the plate, show that passion that you have. Keep your eye on the ball and hit that baby. out of the park.
And I know, with passion, I know that this is important. I know that it's already touched people's lives, this model, and how it applies to people. And when they look at that,
You're on the right track.
Yeah, and that's why I'm willing to just put it out, what I call putting it out to the universe. And wherever it goes, I'm not attached to the outcome.
I just wondered, as you're talking here today, whether that universe gives you a vision so you can see the beginning of the line and the end of the line, and to know where you are in the journey, or is it not a straight line? Or how do you feel? You feel as though there's a long ways to go in this project of yours?
There's many more people to meet. There's many more people to touch on their lives. The line is straight. It really is, although it would appear not to be straight. And in that, it's like, why it doesn't appear to be straight is that we have to, it's, God, when you throw it up and it all comes down, we have to discern. It's the gift that we've given in discernment, and the more we discern, the sharper it becomes, and we can be more defined about it. But to continue to serve and to go on, to go forward, yes, there's much more to do with this. There really is, and I do this with honor and with reverence.
I don't know why I feel flippant, but you say you have good humor in all of this. We sound very serious here today, but laughter is one of the most important things we can bring into our lives. It just reminded me of an old joke, which I'm not going to tell, except that there were three clergymen trying to decide how much of the collection they're going to keep for themselves, and one says, I'm going to throw it up in the air and keep 5% that comes down. And another one said, I'm going to throw it up in the air and keep 10% that comes down. And another one said, I'm going to throw it up in the air. While it's up there, let God keep whatever he wants. So, there are a number of avenues I want to talk about. Calvin told me about this experience you had with a young boy in Montreal, and I think we have to share it with people. And that goes back 3 years. Calvin's got three fingers up, and I almost always know what that means when he does that. Tell me how that transpired and how that made you feel.
Well, it was when you throw it up and it all comes down.
Yeah.
That's what happened. It came down, and I met Ryan Olson from Chagrin Falls, Ohio, and I met his mom Nancy at Omega. We were down there, not knowing each other before, and the weekend that we were doing was building healthy relationships. Again, trying to increase my skills and try to learn more about myself too. But anyway, while we were there, we were walking up towards the cabins. It was a break time in the afternoon, and we're just getting to know each other. And she talked about how her son Ryan had a brain tumor, and it was malignant. He had surgery, and he had chemo for it also. But anyhow, how that all started was that, where are you from and so on. I said, I'm from Plattsburgh, New York, and they weren't sure where that was. I said, well, if you're familiar with Montreal, Canada, I'm probably about an hour and a half from Montreal, Canada. And right off, Nancy said, that's how she started telling me about Ryan. She said, you're so close to the Montreal Expo. She said, my son Ryan, she quickly said about his condition, and she said his make-a-wish could never come true because he wanted to meet Vladimir Guerrero. And that
might as well shoot for the top, right?
So anyway, I said to her, I says, it didn't happen. She said, no, he got a nice gift that was a computer with a printer and so on. And right off, I'm thinking Calvin. I said, I kind of know a guy.
Make a wish, Calvin. They just seem to go together, right?
I told her, I said, I kind of know a guy that has contact with the Expos. I says,
I guess so.
And we could probably make this happen. I said, would you like me to make a call? And I noticed that she was kind of looking at me kind of strange. And after, in the article I read, she was explaining that she was looking at me thinking, what's this guy? I never met him before, and he's offering to do something like that. She saw that was so strange.
Anybody do that?
Yeah. So anyway, I got home, and I gave Calvin a call, and he didn't even call me back. He got in touch with the Expos, and when he did call me back, he said, this is what we got.
It's all arranged.
Efficient Calvin,
Of course. I've been through this many years with Calvin, who's behind the camera, doesn't even get to speak for himself when we pick on him. And also when we say good things about him, and he's accomplished so many good things besides what he does on camera. So what happened next?
Well, as it started to unfold, I called Nancy and said, this is what Calvin's got. and you need to be up here. I think it was 2 days or whatever.
Where did
because
she live?
It was Chagrin Falls, Ohio.
Oh my goodness.
And anyway, it was getting close to the end of the season, and that was his free agency season. So we knew it was possible he was going to be coming back there. So it was like 3 or 4 days from the time that we called that was the only chance. That was the only window of opportunity. So her mom helped her with the tickets. She came into Burlington, and they had given, I think it was 7 tickets or whatever. They told Calvin there'd be 7 tickets. So my family kind of wanted to go too, which was very nice. And I'm thinking, in my back of my mind, I'm thinking that night before, I don't want everybody to be driving up there in different vehicles. So I'm talking to my oldest son, Stacy, the next morning, and we're talking about it, and the van was not possible. I tried a couple different places, no van. So I opened the telephone book, and it came right to a limousine service, not knowing it was up in Lake Placid. And I called the number, and it was 7:45 in the morning. And the guy answers, and to find out that he's not using it at 7:45, but he, for some reason, went in that morning. And I explained to him what was going on.
Told you, it's all a plan.
Yeah, I mean, when you throw it up, I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, that's it. But anyway, he said, I told him what was going on. He said, that's really nice for anybody to have, to be doing that. He said, I'll tell you what I'll do. He says, I'll just charge you for my driver. And he said, I won't charge you for the limousine, because he says, that's an experience I want to partake in also.
Isn't that-
the
see
limousine
how
was,
that works?
yeah. And then he said, I'll pick them up in Burlington. Give me their flight. I said, I promise them to be there. Okay, then he says, we'll pick you up in an hour, because they were bringing 3 people over. They were making
I just love it when it comes together.
from the one of the hotels in Lake Placid. They were bringing somebody over to the airport. So anyhow, his driver picks me up, and I sit in the front with him because they're a little bit crowded in the back. So we start talking, and he had some questions for me when he found out that I work with separated and divorced people. So anyway, I mean, it's like there was so many things covered, so many I's that were dotted, so many T's that were crossed. And we got over there, and then somebody notified Channel 5 News. I don't know who it was, but
I wonder who that might have been.
but anyway, they were there waiting. They knew about this experience was happening. And the limo driver was so excited about it that he was telling people about it, And anyway, there was kind of a gathering, and there the Channel 5 News was interviewed. They interviewed me at first, and then when Ryan and Nancy came down the thing, Ryan peeks around the corner. He's seeing the news, the TV
How
camera.
old is he at this time?
God, he's probably 14 years old
14 maybe
Yeah.
at that time? Wow, what an experience for everybody.
now. Yeah. So it just, and for me, I mean, it's like I'm just hanging on for the ride, enjoying this.
What a ride, though.
Yeah, and I got so much credit for even the article in the paper was a nice article, and I was still working at the time, and I couldn't walk up and down the halls while people just shaking my hand, say it was a nice thing. I said all I did was I made one phone call. That's all. I made one phone call to Calvin, and it all happened after that. Yeah. So when we got in the limousine and we went over to Montreal, we had the whole family in the limousine, and anyhow, we got up there. Come to find out that the limousine driver was planning. He was going to make that trip that day, go home and change, and go back to the game because he
Come
knew.
on.
No, seriously.
You gotta be. Oh, Calvin put him up to it.
No, absolutely
Isn't
no.
this amazing? Come
Because
on.
because Vladimir is one of his fans, one of his favorite players,
Isn't
and he
this
knew there was a
amazing?
possibility that would be his last chance to see him. So Ryan and the limousine driver became good buddies because it was, Vladimir was one of their favorite players. No, I'm serious. I mean,
Wow.
that's how it happened.
Isn't it beautiful, though?
Yeah. So when we got up there, and one of my sons that came with me, the way the tickets were dispersed, my son brought the limousine driver with him, and as a thank you for being there, he bought him his ticket. So they sat up further, and there was a whole group of us that sat down towards wherever behind home plate. And the game itself, I mean, it just was amazing. They were playing Atlanta. And
Oh, they were?
They were playing Atlanta.
Isn't that amazing?
And I can't think, who's the pitcher that came from the Cubs and went back to the Cubs? Maddox. Greg Maddox was pitching.
Oh, see,
When
Calvin knows.
the Expos were down, I think, 3-1 in the 7th inning, and Calvin came up and said to Ryan, he says, how are they going to do? They're going to come back and win it. And I'm thinking to myself, when you're down 3-1 to Greg Maddox, it's almost impossible. But anyway, they took him out the next inning for whatever reason, and they tied the game. And then Vladimir came up and hit that part of that half of the inning. And I'm thinking, and I said to Ryan, I said, wouldn't it be nice if he hit a home run to win the game? Because at that point they were tied.
Come on, you're killing me here.
No,
You're killing me here.
He didn't hit the home run.
Oh.
They walked him. But the next batter, hit a double down the right field line, and the ball got trapped in the corner,
Scored him.
and it scored Vladimir.
See, just as good as
And
a
it's-
home run.
Yeah,
And
right.
they win the game.
And they won the game.
Isn't that beautiful?
I mean, and I'm thinking, as he's crossing home plate, this sounds like a Walt Disney movie.
It really does. I
Yeah.
think we ought to do something with that, don't you?
It's just, it
So it was a great experience. Did he get to go down on the field, Ryan?
yes.
Tell me that.
I'm sorry.
No, we need to know this
Well,
stuff.
we went
This is
inside and
exciting.
Calvin did an interview, and then I don't remember the guy's name. He was the agent for the Expos that did the entertainment, but he brought us out in the field after. Well, even before that, we went underneath the dugout by the dugout or the locker room, and they brought Ryan in.
Did you? Oh,
Yeah.
into the locker
Into the-
room?
yeah, and he had-
Oh,
he
my
had-
goodness.
I'm
Come on.
getting excited just thinking about it.
Oh, wow. I'm really
But
excited.
anyway, Ryan had brought a whole bag of stuff that he wanted Vladimir to sign. I'm thinking myself, of course, that's negative thinking, but
Yeah.
I said, there's no way Vladimir's going to have time to sign all that. So not knowing they were going to bring him in there. And anyway, when they brought him in, and they brought him a chair, and he sat by Vladimir, and Vladimir signed everything. And apparently they had let the other players know
They signed
what Ryan's condition was.
Yeah.
No, they all went over him. Not all of them, a good share of them went over and just rubbed his head.
Oh,
Yeah. And so when he came out, I said to him, I said, Ryan, what was it like in there? He said it was like being in the land of the giants. He said, those guys are big, he said. And so when after that experience, we went out underneath we were on the first base side in the foul area. We were all able to stand there. And I talked to the guy the advertising guy. But anyhow, we had quite a talk. And, we talked about doing something with passion. I said, I really thank you for this. And I said, you've been so good about this and so on, He says, I love this. He said, I'd like to see people with smiles on their faces. And he says, that young man there, he says, it just makes my heart happy to see him. And was it Yuppie, the mascot for the Expos? My two of my granddaughters were there also. And they were taking pictures with my two granddaughters and Ryan with Yuppie and then with Vladimir and some of the other ball players. And Yuppie, my two granddaughters had baseball hats on, the small ones, and he put his arms around them like that. He pulled them down, pulled the hats down, pulled them up, stuff like that. And then he took them off, and he ran out to center field, and he's waving them, not knowing that the crowd was watching, because it wasn't full yet. And the crowd was cheering, And it's like, what an experience. I think
wow.
my
Be
two
part of this whole thing.
Yeah, it really
Make a
was.
little history.
Yeah, it really was.
So the whole thing was great. Have you heard from that family since that time?
I've been in touch with them on occasion, and a little over a year ago was the last time I heard from him, and Ryan was still doing great, really.
Come on.
Yeah. he's
Now
doing-
you said he had a brain tumor?
brain tumor that was malignant, and he had surgery.
He did have surgery.
And also he had, I don't know if it was chemo or radiation, but one of the two.
And he's a survivor.
Yes. Yeah, doing quite well.
And as long as he survives, he will never forget that day.
Yeah. I can still see him. He was clapping so hard when Vladimir was crossing home plate.
It's just
you
couldn't write, like you
No.
said, you couldn't write a Disney script
No.
that made it had a
That's
better
right. Yeah.
outcome.
And it happened. It happened all very naturally.
And don't you think that experience didn't have something to do with his recovery at that time?
Oh, yeah.
It's something we haven't talked a great deal about today, but it's very important for me, and I'm sure you agree, that your psychological well-being and your physical well-being are part of a whole circle.
Right. That's right. It is. Because when it starts with believing, it really does. Believing that it's meant for us to have a good life, a happy life. And when we believe that, and then we start to make conscious choices to keep us going that direction, then that stuff all happens very naturally. It's what Deepak Chopra refers to quantum physics, the field of all possibility. The field of all possibility. And that's all possibility for everybody, if we choose to believe.
Now, some of these things you might think are very interesting catchphrases, but if our viewers take time to think about some of these phrases, some that you've coined all by yourself, and others that you have boiled out of
Right.
all the things you've read and heard and done, maybe their lives will be impacted by just saying those phrases over and over. We're going to wrap up our interview with this very interesting guy in just a moment. Robert, this is the last chapter, but it's not the last chapter because this great quest of yours will continue for a long time. You mentioned something a while ago that I think we ought to elaborate on because some of our audience may not be familiar with it. I'm very familiar, but I want to talk about something else that you do with folks here that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I'm a Reiki master. Actually, I just down in the end of June and July, I went down to Ellenville at the Nevele Resort and became a Karuna Reiki master, which is considered a level higher than Reiki master. And there's symbols and so on that we, when we receive attunements, that we can work with. And really, what Reiki is itself is that it's energy healing. And at one time, it was said to have come from it's an ancient form of Chinese healing. But it's been clarified, and it started with a Japanese professor back in 1850 who started doing a lot of research and had experienced himself that, again, it was channeled through him, and that he started to document it and so on, and he started giving classes, and then he passed it on to another individual. And around 1900, that second individual thought, because of all the wars and so on and how men were killed in wars, that he should pass it on to a lady. So there was a lady from Hawaii who he taught, and then she came over to the United States later on, and in the 30s. By the 1930s, she was teaching people over here. But what it is that we have an energy field about us, and this is not, it's not really immersed in our culture yet, but it really is growing. And we have an energy field, and in our energy field we have chakras. And in our chakras, it's our energy. It's basically, there's two beliefs, that it comes in through our head, and then the other belief, it comes in through our feet. But what it is that, my understanding, it comes in through our feet and it goes up through our whole body. And it's a very gentle, and as we talk about validation, what it does is that it complements, when, as a Reiki master, I complement their energy field. And this is, the way I explain it, it's like if your car didn't start and your battery was just dead for some reason or other, I would hook the battery from my vehicle to yours and jumpstart your car. And that's basically what we do as Reiki masters. We jumpstart somebody else's energy field. And once we get it going, get the chakras spinning in the right direction. And this is all non-physical reality. There are people who are gifted. And with Rosalind Breyer, who 3 or 4, maybe 5 years ago now at Omega, I was in one of her classes that lasted a week. And she was gifted to see the aura, the colors. And a healthy aura is the rainbow colors. And in that she can see the chakras, if they're spinning in the right direction or not. And the amazing part about it is that on this side of the equator, they spin clockwise. On the other side of the equator, they spin counterclockwise. And it's all tied in with the electromagnetic field. But it's very much a gentle process. When people first come for it, they're very nervous about it because it's a new experience. But after the second or third time, actually just a few nights ago, the guy that came, it was his third experience, and he started falling asleep through it. And when people fall asleep in it, you know that they're receiving the energy and that everything is working right. But the important part about Reiki is that, especially somebody that's going through a stressful situation, what I call the energetic charge of that experience can be very stressful. And so by receiving Reiki on a regular basis, it can help reduce the intensity of the experience, and it can even be very physical healing too. I mean, I've had wonderful experiences with people that, well, not even people, but with dogs. I did. One lady called me. She was really sad that she had brought her cat to the veterinaries, and it was dying because the kidneys were shutting down. So I went over to visit her that night just so she could have company. And that particular cat came and laid on my lap, and I just did a Reiki experience with it while I was there, And I talked to the lady 2 or 3 weeks later, and I said, how's the cat doing? Oh, she said, I don't know what happened, but apparently they misdiagnosed it because the cat's okay now.
Sure they did.
Okay.
Don't
Yeah.
you love it?
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, that's just an example with animals, but with people, I mean, it's very instrumental in helping people emotionally. As I said, it can be also very physical healing also.
There's so much written and written about it. So much you can find out about any of these things.
Yeah.
How will it? I don't know if you want to give out your phone number or your address, but I'm sure that people watching this program want to meet this guy Robert up close and personal. How would they do that?
My number is 561-0707, and if I'm not, quite often when I have people here, I won't answer the phone, because I want to continue to, if it's the experiential guidance or if it's the Reiki experience, I won't interfere. So they can just leave a message on my answering service. But again, it's 561-0707. But I just want to go back one step, because talking about Reiki, how they can find out about it, they can go online. And it's spelled R-E-I-K-I. So what I recommend to people is that I have spent hours talking with people, and then they have upgraded their website. So if they go online, as I said, it's spelled REIKI, leave a space and then put FAQ, frequently asked questions, it brings you right to it. And if you've got hours to spend, you can read about it, because Reiki is being used by now in hospitals, it's being used by doctors, it's being used by many professionals. And it's also being used by lay people, as I am. And anyway, it's just so invigorating, to hear how it's, as I said, it's not that familiar in our culture, but it's growing. It really is. And it's the main part to understand is that it's a very spiritual experience. And I just want to emphasize how important it is, if people want to find out about it, is that they can go online. And
The internet is a wonderful resource.
It is.
It's, I said it before and I'll say it again.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of research in my lifetime. I still do much research every day and every week.
Mm-hmm.
I used to have to go to libraries and schools and call people on the phone, and now I type in.
I have my own library.
You Google whatever you want to Google, and it's there. And by the way, do you have a website yet?
Not yet.
Come on, Robert.
Well, okay, give it to me.
I wish I knew how to do it. I have no idea.
No,
But
no, I
find
just-
somebody who does, and
Yeah.
if you go online, you'll open up some more of those iron doors. Maybe you won't be ready to see what's inside.
I have a nephew who does websites, and he lives in Virginia, but we're
Next step.
supposed to get together and.
I love it. You can do it.
Yeah.
Robert, Dominic, thanks so much.
Thank you.
For your time. It's wonderful to meet you.
My pleasure.
It's just a plan that we all got together
That's right.
today and
That's
expressed
right.
ourselves in this hour and a half on Hometown Cable. Our tremendous thanks to our viewers for your support, not only with your eyes and your ears watching the program, but telling other folks about it, supporting it, because this is a viewer-supported public access cable television program. And for businesses that want to find out how to underwrite it, call Calvin Castine at Hometown Cable. 2 words, you'll find him in the phone book. Again, thank you all for watching, and who knows where we're going to be next time for our little corner.